Welcome to the Week 9 SCPI Football Podcast. Alongside Keith DeMolder, I am Connor Morissette. Can't believe we're already on to Week 9, Keith. We got a brand new Top 10, which looks a lot different this week. We'll break that down. We have our game balls, and we'll get to the picks, as we always do. Keith, you had the best game in the section this past week. You were at Crenshaw against Dorsey, a game where we thought it was going to be close. I picked Dorsey, you picked Crenshaw, so you were right, but it ended up being a blowout in favor of Crenshaw, and now in our poll, they're all the way up to number 2. It's them and Narbonne right now at the top, and I don't know if anyone else is even close.
Yeah, I mean, Crenshaw had a fantastic game, 33-14 the final in that one. That said, the top 10, very hard to come up with this week. There's a lot of different teams. You know, it's like 4 and 3 teams that, you know, they have some good wins, but bad losses, that type of thing. So, very interesting week in the city section, no doubt.
Let's get into the top 10. Speaking of bad losses, Banning, they're the 10th team, and they did have a bad loss. They played at Narbonne, who's the best team in the section, losing 51-zip. Why are they still in the top 10, you ask? It's because it was between them and Southgate, and Banning actually beat Southgate, so that's why they're there. But that just goes to show that the top teams in the LA City section, the Narbonnes, the Crenshaws, they're just a lot better than everybody else, and Banning this week suffered the heavy defeat. The week before it was Carson.
Right.
Narbonne's pretty good, and I don't think anyone's going to unseat them, even Crenshaw. Tough one for Banning. They at Gardena next, should be an easy win for them. But 51-0 to Narbonne. You know, you just got to, after that, regroup and move on to the next week.
Yeah, not much you can really take away from that. The defense played horrible. The offense was also horrible. Couldn't even get a point on the board. Carson at least got some life going, but Narbonne, clearly the number 1 team overall. It'll be interesting to see how Banning does the rest of their schedule.
At 9, the 1 Division II team in the mix this week, it's Eagle Rock. They crushed Torres 70-14, kept Taekwon Gilmore quiet. He had 9 touchdowns the week before. Eagle Rock 6-1. They're playing at home against Marshall next. They've beaten Southgate, South Pasadena, and Torres. 3 pretty good wins for him. Torres probably not on the same level as those other 2. But I know the quarterback is someone who you've been watching in Division II, and he had a monster game. What was it, 6 passing and 2 rushing, and that's Davey Stone.
Yeah, Davey Stone, unbelievable performance from him. Yes, as you said, 6 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. Did it all truly for Eagle Rock. They've had some impressive wins this year. Fantastic win against Torres, considering that Taekwon Gilmore, he has been unreal this season. Basically about 20 yards per rush he has averaged this year, and they were able to hold him down, so that's saying a lot. That said, they'll have some tougher competition come playoff time.
Reseda is another good Division II team, so watch out for them. At 8, Venice, they're 4-3. They beat Hamilton 35-8 this past week. Play University next, should be an easy win for them. In that game against Hamilton, Bryson Tremaine had 5 catches for over 100 yards, and quarterback Dion Moore, who remembers filling in for Luca DeMont, he continues to play really well for Venice, and that's why they're doing so well. The Western League is wide open. Palisades still in the mix. Fairfax and Venice are the leaders right now. Right now, I think Fairfax and Venice have the best chance, but Palisades is there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Palisades a lot. You know, they just got out of the top 10, probably about the 12th best team in the section right now.
12.
They had a good game against Fairfax, but couldn't pull the W off. That said, Venice, Bryce Tremaine, unreal receiver, probably one of the top 5 best receivers in the section right now. We continue to hear his name week in and week out. He's played unbelievable. The question will be, can Venice's defense hold out some of these top teams?
And that is the question, absolutely. They played El Camino Real earlier this year, and they had a defensive stand to win the game, so they played well in that one. But remember, Elk only has 2 wins this year. At 7, San Fernando, they're 5-2. They crushed Canoga 63-0 this past week. Nehemiah Thompson, the running back for them, has been really, really good. Kyle Bryan had 3 touchdowns in that game. San Fernando, they're climbing up the charts a little bit. On the Max Preps ratings, they're 12. We have them at 7. They've beaten Reseda. That's probably their best win. So I think with them, how can they improve? They'll have to show it in the playoffs, because the marquee wins for them just aren't going to be there in the league they play in.
Right.
But hey, you play against who you play against, and they've beaten them just about everyone.
Yeah, if they win out, they should get in the open division, considering that they did beat Reseda. Reseda, a very good team as well. It'll all come down to, you know, them and Eagle Rock, I believe, to see who gets in the playoffs.
Absolutely. At number 6, it's Fairfax. They're the biggest climbers. They went from 10-6, 14-7 win over Palisades. They play Hamilton next. Kevon Johnwell is the guy who you've been talking a lot about.
Yeah.
He had over 100 yards in that game. Fairfax with Scott Harris and Johnwell. That offense is dangerous, and against a very good Palisades defense, 14 points was enough to win the game. And then the Fairfax defense held up. They picked off Daniel Hayes, the Palisades quarterback, twice in that game. So their defense looks all right as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Palisades, a great team offensively. They can make big plays, hit the home run ball. That said, I really liked what I saw from their offense against Palisades' good defensive line. Johnwell to get 100 yards, something we really haven't seen against Palisades all year. So great win for them, and I could see them really being dangerous come playoff time.
Yeah, on the defensive line, Palisades has 3 Division I players, so that just goes to show how good Johnwell is. Into the top 5, San Pedro, one of the 2 teams to lose in our top 10 this week. They played at Carson, and it was a very close one. They lost 25-17. Where was the offense in that game? That was the question for me, because
right.
the offense, even against a team like Lawndale, who Culver City struggled with and got killed by this past week, San Pedro's offense hung in there against a very talented Lawndale team, but they couldn't do so against Carson on the road. They play at George Washington Prep next. They'll win that game. They host Narbonne next. I was looking at Carson. So they host Narbonne next. They probably won't win that game, but anything can happen. That's why they play the game. But my question on the paper, where was the offense in that game?
I don't know. I think it was probably some offensive line troubles, really. If you're not winning that battle in the trenches, you can't win the ball game. You can't get the pass going, and you certainly can't get the run going if you don't have your offensive line intact. That said, I think that home field advantage really is the key here in this Marine League. Clearly, Narbonne, they have huge wins at home. Carson with a big win over San Pedro. So I think that'll be an interesting thing with San Pedro hosting Narbonne.
I'm interested to see that as well. Like you said, Narbonne has crushed teams. Carson, Banning at home. Marine League teams at home. They barely scraped by Serra, but the home field advantage is so big for them. How will they do on the road? They're 0-2 on neutral fields, and I believe they've won just once away, so that's something to look out for. All right, at 4, Birmingham, they had the big 38-14 win over Granada Hills this past week. The thing with them is the schedule is just not that difficult the rest of the way. They should win out, but they do have their most challenging league game next on the road against El Camino Real, who's very hungry to win games, only having won 2 so far. Jason Artiga, the quarterback for Birmingham, he put up some NFL-like numbers in that Granada Hills game, 23-37, 2 touchdowns, and 338 yards. So the offense is ticking for him, and then defensively only allowing 14. Not bad as well, so they stay at 4 this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about it in podcasts past about how they had a really good non-conference schedule, and they performed well against Southern Section teams, which has kept them so high in our rankings. And obviously they have an easy league schedule, so once again, it'll all come down, can they win out in this league?
Into the top 3, Carson. Finally, we got the game from Carson that we expected with all of their transfers. The defense showed up. Denalen Fuimano was a beast in this game against San Pedro, 25-17. They won that one, and we both picked San Pedro. We were not buying into Carson, and they proved us wrong, so we got to give the Colts some credit. That was kind of their big win on the year. You look at the games they've played this season, Quartz Hill in the non-league, and they lose a close one to that Southern Section team. Narbonne on the road, they get blown out. So it was a bit of a Palisades situation. Where is that big win? And they get it against San Pedro at home. So I'd like to congratulate them. That's Coach Arnold Ale's first really big win of this tenure for him at Carson. So congrats to him. And then, like I said, at George Washington Prep next, they should crush them.
Yeah, and it was crazy to see the fact that we had San Pedro, our number 2 team in the section throughout our rankings, and then for Carson to handle them like that, to limit them to 17 points overall. Fantastic performance. I really liked what I saw from their offense, considering what I saw against Narbonne. It really wasn't there all game. They had some really bad mistakes, overthrown passes, fumbles, throughout the game. And for them to perform like that against San Pedro, really great for them.
DeJounte Jones for Carson at 2 touchdowns, the running back for them. So he played well in that win against San Pedro. And then the top 2, like we talked about, we can get the scouting report from you, Keith. Crenshaw, 5-2, big winners over Dorsey. They play View Park next. Look like they're firing on all cylinders.
Oh yeah, and that should be an easy win against View Park, almost a rivalry game because they're right down the street from one another. That said, looking at the game against Dorsey was just outmatched from the start, whether it was Isaiah Johnson or Solomon Hassan. Both of them transfers from LA High, former Romans. They did fantastic. Solomon, he had 172 yards, 3 touchdowns on the game, and by halftime, everybody knew, even though it was a rivalry game, that this one was done. And so what I liked was their defense really pulled through. Isaiah Smalls couldn't complete any passes all night, couldn't really get anything going, a couple of fumbles from him. So really great performance from Crenshaw. They're the team to beat out there.
And then at number 1, Narbonne, 4-3 on the year. They crushed Banning 51-0 this past week. And they're at San Pedro this week, so that'll be their toughest Marine League game because it's on the road against a very good San Pedro team. But Narbonne, again, Crenshaw, they're really good, but it would take, I guess, they killed Dorsey, but it takes more for us to pick against Narbonne. That's just how loaded that team is, and we'll get to our picks in a little bit, but I think we'll both probably end up going with Narbonne at San Pedro, even though that is a very good game. But how much can you say about the Jalen Chapman? So good. You look defensively. Ray Scott is so talented. The linebacker for them, Logan Taylor in the secondary, Darian Butler, Julian Lewis, the other linebackers. I just feel like I'm repeating myself every week because these guys are so talented. Yeah, absolutely. You can't compete with their talent. The way you're going to beat them, schematics, and just honestly luck. And so I think that San Pedro, it'll be a test for them this week at home. I think that Narbonne, looking at their schedule, they've been tested through and through, and they've performed. They've come up to the challenge. So it's really their league and their section to lose. To recap the top 10, 10 Banning, 9 Eagle Rock, 8 Venice, 7 San Fernando, 6 Fairfax, 5 San Pedro, 4 Birmingham, 3 Carson, 2 Crenshaw, and 1 Narbonne. All right, Keith, it's time for the Game Ball segment. Who are the players of the week in the LA City section? As always, we start with you. Who do you have this week? All right, so I have 2 game balls to give out this week. Davey Stone from Eagle Rock, clearly showing he's one of the better QBs there in Division II. He had 8 touchdowns overall, 2 rushing, 6 through the air, so you get a game ball from me. The other game ball has to go to the Crenshaw running back, the transfer who's come in and played unbelievable ball, that being Solomon Hashen. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that last name right, but that said, he had a great game against Dorsey in the rivalry game. 3 touchdowns, 170 yards. Your game ball from me. Mine, I have 1. It's the quarterback for Southgate, Ernie Arcia. Southgate against Garfield on the road. They were down 21-0 after the first quarter, and then in the second half they were down 14 points. Arcia and the rest of Southgate battled back to beat Garfield 49-48 on the road. It was an incredible game. Let me read you the stat line from Arcia. He was 22-37 for 210 yards, 5 touchdowns through the air. He converted the crucial 2-point conversion, a little pass over the middle to get the win, and he also added a score on the ground. I have to say this, he did have 3 interceptions, so he didn't help his cause at times, but just the grit that he showed to get back into the game and to win on the road against a good Garfield team. You look at the Max Preps ratings, they don't have too many wins, but they're number 14 there. Southgate, they're just on the cusp of our top 10. They're so close, but they've lost to Banning and Eagle Rock, so they're out. Ernie Arcia, the quarterback for them, played exceptionally well, minus a couple of turnovers, and he gets the game ball for me this week, leading his team back on the road by double-digit deficit. Incredible from him. So congratulations, Ernie. Keep up the good work. All right, Keith, let's move on to the picks. Not too many great games in the LA City section this week, but I have 3 that I would like to discuss. Yeah. First, we will start with the big one, Narbonne at San Pedro. I'm taking Narbonne. I'm sure you're doing the same, but how close will this one be?
I'm going to say it's going to be closer than people expected. I think that San Pedro this year, they were top of the rankings, and I think they saw themselves as such, and then to lose a tight one, I mean, think about it, only 8 points to Carson. That's not that big of a loss per se. So I think that they make it pretty close. They have the home field advantage. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. The home field advantage may not be a huge thing as I think in the city section. But that said, I think San Pedro, it's going to be a slugfest. It's going to be all-out brawl. They're going to run the ball. They're going to run the football. And so I think it'll be Narbonne in the end, but San Pedro will put up a fight.
I thought Narbonne and Banning was going to be a little closer, and I was totally wrong. I thought Narbonne Carson was going to be a little bit closer. I was totally wrong. So I can't pick San Pedro to even keep this one close. I'm taking Narbonne by over 3 touchdowns.
Wow.
Okay, second game, Birmingham at El Camino Real. This was the toughest game for me to pick this week. I wanted to pick El Camino Real so bad because they're on the road. I think Birmingham, they've played such an easy schedule. Maybe they're kind of relaxing a little bit. But I think they're just a little bit too much for Elko, so I'm taking Birmingham. But this was a tough one for me to pick. I think it's going to be close. This one will be as opposed to the first game.
Yeah, I think Birmingham, they've clearly shown that they can hang with some of these other teams. They've blown out some other teams. Taft couldn't even compete with Birmingham. So I think they have that confidence offensively to try and win games, and I think they'll win this one too.
And then the third game, Keith, I know despite their loss that you're still high on Palisades. They host Westchester this week. Westchester, they've been a tough out, but they have lost. They've lost to Venice. They've lost to Carson, and that was before Carson got their transfers. They're a good team. Esteban Bozeman is a very good running back, but they don't have the wins to show for it. Now they're playing Palisades, a team desperate for a win. I'm going to reserve my pick till the end. Who do you have?
I'm going to have to go with Palisades right off the bat. I think Westchester is a very good team. I think that they're going to play this one very close. They played Carson close. They played Venice close as well. But they just haven't been able to pull it off. Come crunch time, I think it'll be the same way. I think that'll be a fourth quarter win for Palisades. And I think that Westchester, they'll come close, but not close enough.
I'm taking Palisades as well, but I don't feel great about it. I do not feel great about it. I mean, just look at what Palisades has done this year. They have great players. The program has been great to me. I really love you guys. But Huntington Park at home, they've kind of taken a swing down, and you scraped by in that one. Losing the Southgate game, losing at Fairfax, that's a bit of a different game than the other ones, but still, in the big games, it's been tough for Palisades at times, and this is a big one for them in the Western League. I'm going to take Palisades, but again, I don't feel great about it. They need to prove something to me, and if they don't this game, then chances blown. This is the game you have to prove something after losing to Fairfax and losing to Southgate, because if you don't get this one, I think they're looking at a
maybe D1
potentially
in the
not,
playoffs,
potentially not in the Open Division. So it's a very important one there. And then of course they play Venice as well, so they can work their way back in, but they have to start showing us something.
Right. Yeah.
Would
absolutely.
you agree?
I would definitely agree with that. I think that the wins they have had this season, they've been good on some level, but the losses, they've had huge turnover losses. And even against Huntington Park, it wasn't really that impressive of a win. They have so much talent. We know D1 guys throughout. It's just about execution.
That's the Week 9 Football Podcast. I will be at the Narbonne against San Pedro game. Do you know where you will be at yet?
I will be at Palisades, Westchester.
Okay, so Keith will be there. All the Palisades folks, look out for him. And at San Pedro, feel free to shake my hand. I'd love to see you. It's been the Week 9 Football Podcast for Keith DeMolder. I'm Connor Morissette, and thank you to that trombone player. We'll see you next time.